today. And without further ado, I'm introducing Diane de Obertse.
Goeiedag julle. Ek is
Diane, de bag net gegaan, net die microfoon.
Ek hoor nie eintlik nie.
Nee, dit is vir die online.
Hi, ek is Diane de Obertse. Ek present vandag vir julle Askaria, donker, twisted, galg humor, liriese verhaal van 3 vroue in 'n tronk wat fight vir bietjie menslikheid. Wat al meeste van hulle menswaardigheid verloor het en het graag nou deur 'n beauty pageant in die tronk wil terugkry. So wat 'n wonderlike manier om in 'n donker tyd soos die te kyk na tronke as deur 'n beauty pageant. So yes, here we go. Askaria verbind die fiktiewe persoonlike verhale van 3 selmaats met verskeie getuienisse van die Waarheids- en Versoeningskommissie of die Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Oud-leier van die VF+, Constant Viljoen, wie ek nogal sexy vind, het in sy wonderlike Engelse aksent gesê, "Perhaps the worst of our past was that we never knew each other." En hiermee gesê wil ek graag die gehoor en die karakters oorkant mekaar stel, soos 'n tipe commission, dat julle kry die reg om die oordeel te vel op hierdie karakters. Ja, as te ware tipe kommissie waar hulle mooiste, lelikste, hulle kakste, hulle menslikste na vore wys en kom ons as Suid-Afrikaners kyk na mekaar en probeer om bietjie menslikheid raak te sien en kos lag daarvoor en kos huil miskien bietjie daaroor. Den doel natuurlik om die konfrontasie uit te bring is om ook dan na die onmenslike te kyk. En wat 'n meer fabulous manier natuurlik as deur 'n beauty pageant en nog met 'n tronknaam soos Vlakplaas wat die moordplaas was tydens die Truth Commission het dit uitgekom, die Vlakplaas 5, Wouter Mens, Pieter Hugo, Eugene de Kok wat die hoof was, Joma Masela en dan ook Eugene de Kok is dan die tronkwag wat hulle ook het, 'n bietjie 'n pervy ou, maar hy is daar. Gee my net vakansie. Dan om die gevoel van die Truth Commission natuurlik weer terug te kry, omdat dit soveel jare terug gebeur het, gaan ons soundscapes gebruik van die aanhalings, gaan ons videomateriaal gebruik. Baie van die THC is opgeneem deur die SABC, so daar's baie videomateriaal wat plaasvind, wat nogal erg kan wees vir sensitiewe gehoorlede. Dan Wouter Mens het ook iets interessant gesê. It is not these men, but a culture which is asking for amnesty. En in die geval is dit 3 vroue, wat hulle vrou moes staan in 'n land wat nou nog sonder versoening en amnestie is. Hulle het moeg geraak daarvoor om victims te wees en om magteloos te wees en neem toe gereg in hulle eie hande. Wat my opgeval het met die Truth and Reconciliation Commission was dat die vroue was meestal die ma's en die lovers van die victims of die perpetrators. En ek wil weet wat die vroue sê. Nee, kom ons gee vir hulle stem, jy weet, en wys vir vroue nie net as sexualized objects nie, maar wys vir vroue hoe ons lyk, quirky, fun, curvy, sassy, simple, intelligent, gruesome, tough, al daai. So wat ek vra is dat julle vandag 'n tipe feministiese vergrootglas opsit. 'n tipe cool sonbril wat ons kan opsit om na die verlede te kyk. Want miskien is die toekoms vrou en miskien sal die toekoms baie beter lyk as dit vrou is. So baie dankie julle en geniet dit.
Dear Baxter guest, welcome to this performance at the Baxter Theatre Centre. As a courtesy to your fellow patrons and the artists, please ensure that all cell phones are switched off. We would also like to remind you that the wearing of masks throughout the performance is mandatory, as required by COVID-19 regulations. Thank you. Enjoy the performance and please stay safe.
Hulle het gesê my kind was al dood voordat ons by die hospitaal opgedaag het. En ek het nou Sina dan so mooi gevra. Kyk of Tres nog leef. Ek weet nie waar Paul sit nie. maar sy het net sy paplyf van my oorhandig. Brandewyn nog op sy lippies, boereraad. My pa het altyd vir ons gegee. Kon hom nie leer aandoen nie. My pa het gesê, hy het genoeg slegte publisiteit gehad. Vlakplaas is al waaroor hy aangegaan het. En Dirk Coetzee was klaar besig om alles op te fok. Ek onthou toe die hof binne stap. Ek het gevoel asof dit ek was wat hulle gebraai het. Al die ANC-communiste wat verkool was. Dirk Coetzee se hande is nou nog vol roet. Maar myne moet wit wees. Dit moet. Ek was maar net 'n ma wat die beste vir haar kind wou hê.
Ek is gedoop as Annelies Boonsdaier in die NG Kerk van Ventersdorp. Maar ek het myself in die kieriepoel agter ons huis as stukkie gedoop. Voortrekkers was my favourite op skool gewees. Kyk, hoorie, ek het myself so opgewek dat ek tot die monument in Pretoria kon gaan sien. En hulle het my egter van die raad afgehaal toe ek stand Oktober, fucking cheek. Asof almal van die groot trek geleerdheid gehad het. Fietrik nie klink Madonna stom. Het Shaka hom dan nie op die bos gelei nie. Anyway. Ek het toe daar 'n matriek gekry. My ma wou hê, ek moes by Snip en Stip gaan werk, maar die tannies was darm te vol kak. En toe skop Jan Bul, die emmer, en Ventersdorp sportbaan kort 'n nuwe kroeg maar. Dop is mos daar 'n deel van ons mense se bloed, veral brandhaps. Ek skink op vir jou lekker man. Lekker, met coke en skyn, maar net die hele tyd op die rand is ys.
Net ys, ja.
Ja, dan probeer ek nou staan se kak sê. Die man het geweet, as jy by Ventersdorp sportbar instap, dan los jy jou naaiery buite. Die papiers. So kan die koetse jy mag weer by. Ja, wat? Tot met 'n vonnis van 10 jaar is stukkie woonsaal nie te kan.
Ek was sekretaris by die hoërskool Hendrik Verwoed. Enigste colored vrou op die personeel. Nie dat dit 'n probleem was nie. Hulle het my baie tuis laat voel. Vir al die juffroutjies. Hulle sou regularly aangaan oor die Sharpeville uprising homself herhaal het met die feesmas vol besigheid. Ek sluk dan maar flou klemtie. My ma het my geleer om nie met 'n tatie mens te stry nie, anders moet jy Ek het gou touwys geraak. Vinnig. Jare se opgehoopte admin iets van die past geraak. Die skoolhoof het gesê, jy is van die goeie soort. Dan was die salary van die slegte soort. En ek was nooit een vir protest nie. Toe ek het maar ook die rassistiese comments van die skoolseuns. Wie my nooit in die oë kon kyk, dieselfde skoolseuns wat my dogter gebaar het. Sy moet niks vir die seuns te doen nie. Sy sê hulle is kinderagtig. Haar naam is Terren, my oudste. En sy het so 'n goeie kans gestaan om head girl te raak, maar school fees. En dan nog AB Junior, my tweede, wat in sy eerste skooljaar was. My salary was eenvoudig net klein. En AB, natuurlijk het hy gewerk. Hy het net siek geword, ja. Siek. En hy het gesukkel om uit die bed te kom. En dit het daai goed. En ek het later ons al 4 aan die liewe gehou. Met 'n salary net minimum wage. Terren het begin help skoonmaak, AB Junior help kos maak en hulle derde het net siek geword. Dis toe dat ek die woorde van my ma vergeet. Ladies,
Ja, boss.
ek roep die mevrou Vlakplaas gevangenes skoonheidskompetisie deelnemers vandag gaan ons studies weer.
Ek wil nie.
Man, weet jy keuse nie.
Boss.
Eugene het gesê jy moet.
Eugene se moe.
Magriet.
My voel hoe het oom met haar.
Eugene sê maar, dis 'n party sponsor.
My kak manne, luister, jy's te betrokke.
Ja, maar jy moet die lewe vir ons baie easier kan maak.
Knap jou ja.
Ek staan voor u vandag nie as 'n werknemer nie, maar as 'n mens. Die daad wat ek op die 10de April 2019 gepleeg het, was ook nie die daad van 'n misdadiger nie, eerder die van 'n desperate ma. Bokkie het reg voor my gesit, sy vuiste gebal tussen sy blaaie en 'n eeulange woede in sy oë. Ek was onder geweldige druk geplaas by die werk, sowel as by die huis. Klasse se afdrukwerk het vermeerder, rekeninge het opgehoop voor my deur, die hoof se frons het opgetrek verby sy bles. Op die 10de April 1939 het Albertus Rupert 'n getal van R20.000 in die skuldrekening inbetaal. Wat ons gaan na die rugbyfonds. Skoolkind is aangesê om die sekretaris te wees. Sy naam is Piet en hy skryf elke woord uit my mond met 'n giftige grys neer. Ek het geweet wat hoërskool Hendrik verhoed van my verwag en vereis. Lese van getroud en om koers te hou waarom ek my werk baseer het. Die getuies word beide aan. Die rugby-afrigter, meneer Naas. Koil gly in sy paard, as hy my boot staar. Maar ek het ook geweet, dat ons God nie vir my 2 pragtige kinders sou gee, net sodat ek hul moes van geleerdheid ontbeer nie. Skoolkind se gifpen hak, hoof hak, pikkie proes, naastom. Jy sien, my kinders, wie ek bitter graag nie wil betrek, se skool voor jy het opgegaan, soos jy weet, en hul rekeninge het opgehoop, onderwysers het begin dreig. Ek erken vandag voor u, ja, ek is skuldig aan die daad. Maar is ek dan ook skuldig van ouerskap? Ek hoop jy kry dit in die hart op 'n dag nie 'n misdadiger te sien nie. Maar 'n mens.
Ek gaan pas sê. Jy sleg blyk.
Dankie. Okay, hakke uit. En ons gaan nou vir ons imagine dat daar music speel.
Ooh, play preachers.
Snoepop. Okay, wat ek al julle wil, solank dan die music speel ergens in jou kop. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Ek sit om 'n liedjie te onthou.
1, 2, 3, Magriet.
Maar kan nie onthou nie.
1, 2, 3, as julle klaar is. Langer bos. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, walk. 1, 2, eerste een ja, en dan die ander. Een ja, dan die ander. Een ja, dan die ander. Hande op die heupe, asseblief. Hande op die heupe. En glimlach. Glimlach. Mooi glimlach.
Ek het nou boss, ek's gatloop.
Smile. Smile. Good. Laat. Swaai jy bes. So goed. As I 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Elke tweede man in Ventersdorp lyk dieselfde. Net een man was anders, altyd by my kroeg op 'n Woensdag, Hy was die enigste man wat sokker gekyk het. Toe weet ek, sommer iets is fout. Die voet oor die druppel, wydsteen soos iemand balle skop, laat sak hy sy kop en vra vir 'n broedelvroet, like nogal, ek was net nou uit van die lag. Nog nooit van my 8 jaar van werk agter die kroeg het 'n kerel die versoek gestel met 'n strooitjie nogal. Ek het die pirates gecheer. Ek was uit die veld geslaan. Nie net was die bal skoppery nogal toe nie so kakkie, maar die kerel was baie nice. Al het hy gesê hy bly in die APK predikantsgarage. Toe halftime aanbreek, draai hy na my. My pa was een van julle. Ek lig 'n wenkbrauw. Toe die Soweto uprising uitsterf, het my pa 'n boerbol geword. From the early 80s, mommy and me and the ANC was left. My pop was nog vas. Hoe maak dit om 'n boerbol? 'n dag geword. Hond van apartheid. Hy sluk sy sletslap en klaar. Blaf. Nou dalk sy dans. Sy glimlag raak grim. My pa was een van die askaries by Vlakplaas. Hy het mense van ons veld verraai, Jesus. Beelde van die polisie wat 1000 swart liggame uitmekaar uitslaan op ons TV na 10, draai in my maag, moenie kyk nie, so ma skree. My pa het nou 'n nuwe vrou en kinders. Hy word blood money betaal, omdat hy nou weer die boere verraai. Want dis nog goed wat hulle gedoen het, was verkeerd. Dis verkeerd. Korrigeer hy my. En ek breek nog 'n broedelvloed oop. Hy sluk dit asof die laaste dop in Ventersdorp is. Is ook nie te kakkie.
Blaad van blesspeel. Ou Sina het lakens gebring, krem en blank. Krane, kraap oop. My seun se groot oop. Ou Sina bly in die gang op en af loop, kriek kwa kriek, kriek kwa kriek. Klein lyfie neer lê. Sy brein teen blank lakens vou ek toe, spin my bemin. Druk, dip. Ek skink in pa se glas. Gly die manna meer, sluk, brand, sluk, pa. Ek skeer die lakens. Sina sit, bles harder. Chris begin spar die teels nat, gloef, goef, goef. Ek gryp die bottel. Brand, gooi, baar, gly. Brand, sy, baar, lyfie, brein, brand, skree hy. In die naam van die seun, ek lig, druk sy neusie toe, soen sy voorkop. Nat, neer die Sina, neer in die brandewyn neer. In die naam van die seun, borrel, brand, borrel, nee mevrou, nee, naar, braak, baar, brandewyn, brou, bleach, brou, pa se vrou. In die naam van die Heilige Gees, omsingelde, serpenteer, traan, druppel, tou, ou Sina. Nee mevrou, nee. Sy onteer die teertradisie van boervrou wat haar suigeling berou en God almagtig vertrou. O my seun so rou. Ou Sina, skeer, suurstof, sy lyfie, sy salig sterfte. Jong terug, kom maar, ek gaan weer in 'n riet gee, maar kom net die seer maak hier.
Dis wat nog wel.
Enigiets. Okay.
selfoon in die bal gaan kry toe.
Mama sal nooit weer dat iemand jou seermaak.
Hallo, ma, stukkie. Nee, hulle luister ons nie af nie. Nee, ek mis. Ma.
Mama sal nooit weer dat iemand jou seermaak. Mama sal nooit weer dat iemand jou seermaak.
Nou,
Mama sal nooit weer dat iemand jou seermaak.
wat nou?
Mama sal nooit weer dat iemand jou seermaak. Mama sal nooit.
Baie dankie julle. Jan, Santijn. Ek kan gou terwyl hy net regmaak, dan gaan ons net gou vir Dion, want Dion het die teks gelees, ons net gou die volle, ek sal sommer daar, is reg?
Nice.
Dis reg daar. Dan Dion, jy het die volle teks gelees.
Sjoe. Ja, ek het nogal rou gevind. Jy weet, I feel quite raw after this. So, dis moeilik vir my om aan die hele teks nou te dink. Gee my nog so 'n bietjie tyd.
Ek het op die spot gesit.
Ja, nee, ek sien nie om vir die spot
Is die
nie,
teks
maar, ja.
ten volle klaar geskryf, of is daar nog net 'n gedeelte daarvan, is dit, as jy net kan sê hoe ver dit is en hoeveel jy nog wil ontwikkel?
Hugo, ek is maar een wat nogal hou van baie skryf. Ek hou sommer van 'n hele TV-reeks skryf vir die verhoog. So daar's so 130 bladsye op die oomblik. So, maar dit kom om en by, ek dink by 60, 70 minute om. So die volle toneelstuk is daar. Ek wou baie graag vandag vir julle konteks gegee het van die karakter. So ek wou nie so seer in diepte gaan ek met die politiese fragmente wat daar is, waar hulle in die aanhalings ingaan en die martelings uitbeeld. En hulle is amper soos dogtertjies wat saam speel as hulle mekaar begin martel, as hulle in mekaar se verledes ingaan. So ek wil baie graag vir julle net van die persoonlike getuienisse bietjie 'n konteks gegee het. Ja, maar dit raak nog al hoe meer wack. Ja.
Hoeveel navorsing het jy gedoen hiervoor? Net vir interessantheid en jy weet, you're writing from a very specific perspective. En jy weet, waar kom dit alles, hoe spring jy alles dit bymekaar? Tussen die navorsing, jy weet, die historiese feite en al daai tipe van dinge wat jy gebruik het as 'n agtergrond en dan binne die konteks van om uit baie die perspektiewe wat nie gehoor was nie, so dis nie gedokumenteer. As jy 'n bietjie daaroor kan.
So dit het eintlik maar alles begin hier. Hoe moet ek wat Springbok toe gaan, moet eintjie Krog se Country of My Skull en daar waar ek bly is iets soos ja, rasisme, klassisme in the order of the day. En ja, in my familie is daar nie altyd 'n stem vir 'n vrou of die vrouens nie. So ek dink dit was vir my nogal noodsaaklik om weg te breek uit daai plek uit persoonlik en om actually te gaan na die werk toe, maar ek dink as mense eers in aanraking kom soos iets soos die Waarheids- en Versoeningskommissie wat ek dink baie mense wat van daai era afkom wat daar was, wat dit gesien het op televisie, weet ek het baie negatiewe gevoelens ook daaroor. Omdat hulle voel dit was baie eensydig, baie van die verhore wat daar was. Ja, maar dit was vir my noodsaaklik om geskiedenis te ken. Ek dink vir ons om ook te weet waartoe ons op pad is, moet ons weet waar ons was, sodat ons weet wat om beter te maak. En ek is gaan oor documentaries, YouTube Queen, so daar's Eugene ter Blanche and his white great self, daar's so 'n dokumentêr wat oor die AWB se stand gaan. Uiteindelik in die toneelstuk voer Karen se karakter 'n Christelike vlagdans uit met die AWB vlag wat uiteindelik ook verbrand word. So daar's baie wat daarmee te doen het, veral omdat Sizwe se karakter, die een waarvan Stukkie praat, ook dan half 'n tipe verbintenis is met Ventersdorp se eerste en enigste swart burgemeester wat hierdie AWB vermoor was buite die dorp. So dit's dit, ek het baie gekyk na Antjie Krog se journalistieke werk wat sy gedoen het met Country of My Skull. Toe het ek gekyk na die SABC se Truth Commission episodes op YouTube. Ja, en Max de Pre se skryfwerk ook rondom dit. Maar ek dink wat veral vir my geraak het was toe die mense se stories net getranscribe was en 'n mens gehoor het van die aaklige goeters wat gedoen was en dat dit vergeet was en ek dink dat dit ook te maklik vergewe was. So ek weet gister was al baie gepraat oor kind of like ons praat so baie van die verlede, hoe lyk die toekoms? En dis waarom dit vir my belangrik is om klem te lê daarop. We are working towards a future met ons stories. Ons wil graag wys hoe dit anders kon lyk of hoe dit beter kon wees. As die lig op vroue was en as vroue ook raak gesien was geregtelik vir wie hulle is. Ja. Maar
So die vroue in hierdie storie
Ja.
is se stemme en is behalwe vir die navorsing wat jy gedoen het, dit is jou verbeelding uit dit uit wat daai stemme is om die storie te
yes,
verander.
ja, daar's
Dit kom
baie
nie uit-
verbintenisse natuurlik met die politieke agtergronde, so daar's baie van die stories waarin ook as jy so belangstel om die teks te lees, daar's duidelike footnotes ook gegee, daar's verwysings terug, so daar's references ook waartoe 'n mens kan gaan vir beter konteks daarvan, maar dit is kind of gebruik as 'n tipe verbeeldinglike en 'n historiese iets wat saamkom. Ja.
Kommentaar, vra. Ek dink ons moet na Tracy toe gaan. Ja, Tracy. You're always on my mind.
Thank you, Dion. I thought it was an excellent text. And I think what I like most about it is, we so often see women portrayed in a certain way, and to see, women in kind of like a base criminality in a way, and to see that women are multifaceted and they can be murderers and can go to the extreme, and the violence that women can commit. Because I think there's, we always just look at it on the one side, and it's refreshing to see, that women are full-rounded people that can be as, gruesome and barbaric as men can be. But for me, the very interesting part was the kind of comparison with the TRC and the fact that there's still a reckoning, and in a way, we're going through, I feel now, like a reckoning with women, and that when is that TRC going to happen? So there's still, because we've still got those unresolved issues, and I think that came across so well. And the fact, the complete audacity of having a beauty pageant in a place called Vlakplaas, the ridiculousness of it, and the ridiculousness of, as you say, like, there was this goat, with Ankie Cross work, that it came through so clearly in the text. So it's, well done.
Baie dankie Tracy, en ek dink om ook aan te sluit daarbey, ek dink is tyd dat daar vir vroue 'n voorbeeld begin wys word. Nie soseer gaan vermoor mense nie, but ons stories is meer kompleks en dit mag miskien bietjie taai en rof en hoe kan lyk, but it's not just victimhood en ek dink daai narratief, ek dink daar moet ook nou 'n slag bietjie ander gesig gewys word van dit in Afrikaans en so brutaal as wat dit kan wees, maar ook met die sensitiwiteit en die vrou wees en die moederlikheid. Ja.
Net iemand anders wat nou iets wil sê. Dan gaan ek maar my vraag vra, dink so 'n bietjie nog. Dis baie stil. Ek wil weet, ek wonder en dis obviously jy weet die resources wat jy gebruik, die YouTube video's, boeke wat beskikbaar is, jy weet dit wat beskikbaar is. Sou dit vir jou en ek praat nou spesifiek oor hierdie of in die algemeen ook, maar dan spesifiek oor Skaria, sou dit jou baat om te gaan soek na vroue en met hulle onderhoude te gaan voer en ek bedoel, voel jy dat dit vir jou waarde sal bied of is dit iets en ek bedoel net tipe van daai tipe van research vir 'n skrywer of so het befondsing nodig want jy moet gaan, jy moet travel, jy moet gaan, jy weet daai tipe van dinge. Is dit iets wat jy sou wou doen met so teks of voel jy dat dit nie nodig is en dat jy juist nie daai direkte kontak wil hê nie sodat jy uit 'n ander perspektief daarna kan kyk as wat jy daai direkte kontak met vroue byvoorbeeld het.
Hier as die geleentheid daar sou wees om dit te doen, dink ek dit sal so noodsaaklik wees want ons kyk ook na 'n spesifieke klas van vroue. So ons kyk na vroue wat gewoond is aan minimum wage, ons kyk na vroue wat kroegvroue is, ons kyk na vroue wat nie toegelaat was in haar era om te werk of te gaan nie weens familieomstandighede nie. So ek dink dit sal wonderlik wees om te gaan actually met real life vroue, maar daar's 'n amazing aktrises ook verbonde, maar Telise kon nou nie vandag hier wees nie want sy het haar enkel verstook en haar stem verloor. Ja, heel metafories. Ja. Maar ek dink dit is so lekker stuk om met aktrises ook rond te swaai en ons het vir Amy Jefta as regisseuse. Sy's net op die oomblik besig. Ek dink dis wat julle gister ook gehoor het om in 'n reeks te skiet. So ons het vir Amy Jefta, ons het 'n all-female production team as well en cast. So van die soundscape tot die lighting tot die verhoogbestuur, alles is so female empowered as moontlik. So ons het die materiaal daar en ons vra nou net vir 'n kans om die storie verder te vat, ek dink. Ja.
Dit lyk my nie daar's enige verdere kommentaar nie, baie dankie. Ek het regtig jy kry die befondsing om dit te doen. Right. Nou gaan ons in tegnologie in. Do we have Claire on the line? Sorry? We've got the actors there, so we're just waiting for Claire. So, unfortunately, this cast can't be here. They will log in now, and we're going to do the whole presentation online. This is Claire Stoffert's new play called COVID Moon. I think bringing the actors so long whilst we wait for Claire. Hello, good afternoon. Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Can you hear
There we go.
That's the big question.
We can hear you. That's the most important part, so that's good. And we're just waiting for Claire.
Okay.
To log in.
We can try and get in touch with her on the side, on our cell phones.
I spoke to her just now, so she should be coming in. Are you both in isolation at the moment?
Yes.
So, yeah,
Well,
mainly
technically,
here.
Sorry, just to repeat that.
So technically today is the end of the official mandated isolation. So we thought we'd play it safe by not coming in breathing on everybody. But as of next week, we'll be back and everything's fine. So I think it was a close call, but everything's okay.
Everything will be back to normal next week.
I wonder what happened to Claire.
I've just gotten a message.
A call?
She says she's logged on.
No, she's not. And she's got the same link that you have?
It says, okay, all right. We're going to have to work together to get Claire into the session here.
There I can see she's coming.
Oh, okay.
There's Claire.
Correct.
We're bringing her in. Okay. Welcome, Claire.
Can we just check the mic? Can you hear me?
No, Claire, you're very soft.
Okay, we can try the mic. I just need my actor to guide me to the right place.
This is COVID. Yeah, this is COVID moons. This is all part of it.
Watch a Zoom call for 40 minutes and then they go home.
Is this better?
No.
Not hearing you.
Claire, you're very soft. We can hear everyone else, but you're very soft.
Is this better? Hello?
No.
No.
Okay, I'm going to...
No.
No,
No, you're
Claire.
completely gone.
No.
Hello, is that better?
There we go. Yay. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you.
All right. So at this, we're going to just say goodbye for a moment, and then we'll bring you back again. So we're putting you apparently in the waiting room, and then we'll invite you in again. And we're just going to talk to Claire for now. See you now. Can we take the logo off the screen? Just for this session, please. Thank you. All right, and you can put Claire full screen. Thank you. Claire, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Hugo. Hello, everyone. I was inspired to write this play when I was caught alone and isolated in a high security block in the Cape Town City Bowl by the first level 5 lockdown. I was house sitting, it wasn't my usual abode, and so everything was doubly strange. I was very disoriented. I imagined 2 young people trapped in the same way, side by side in conjoining flats. And I was fascinated by how a new relationship could be navigated through the dividing wall of their balconies, within the limitations of social isolation, but hopefully in language that was intimate. My aim was to limit the temporal scope to the first strange days of lockdown as we were adapting to the virus here in South Africa. And I let the story unfold organically through a series of linear scenes and consequently allowed this to remain unchallenged. For what reason, I'm not sure. It may have something to do with the fact that I was making a play that captures a moment while that moment is happening. But my instinct was to hold it lightly without overloading fragile insights, not insults, fragile insights with too much concept or cleverness. So the realism that I originally started writing with remains, and it is in the domestic style. What emerged is 2 young characters who appear in the flesh, along with a chorus of friends, family, and colleagues who appear as voices on their phones, or the director may choose to project those faces as in a video call. And although these 8 characters are crucial to the dramatic action of the play, we're not seeing those characters today. We're concentrating on the relationship between our 2 young major characters. I wanted to capture a blend of naivety and ironic cynicism that I'd perceived in students I'd taught over the years and young people that I directed. And I wanted to reimagine the unlikely bonds that I'd witnessed between people from different backgrounds. And I wanted to celebrate their vulnerabilities and resilience. So I consulted an ex-student, now successful actor, Katu Ramabalana, and also my own son, who became my son Alex, who became my key reader and respondee. So those two had a lot to do and had a lot of help and input. Specifically, Katu with input into the voice of Lefuno. Now, who is Lefuno? He's a copywriter. He's been brought from Gauteng for a job interview with an advertising agency and put up in someone's Airbnb, where he's trapped by the sudden lockdown and ban on travel. A golden boy and election success story since adolescence, he's suddenly confronted with the specter of joblessness and other personal losses. For context, it's important to know that Lefuno is so confident of his chances with a new job in Cape Town that he's given notice at his current agency. We're not quite sure why. Perhaps he wants to play fair and be transparent and honorable. Magda is quirky with heightened instincts, a white Afrikaans UCT art student from Somerset West who repurposes materials for her sculpture project and whose metaphysical explorations take her way beyond her conservative background. And it's extremely important to her that she's not forced to go home to her oppressive father during lockdown, and therein lies her challenge and ultimately a devastating loss. Please imagine that there is a dividing wall between the two characters, which slants down to waist height as it reaches the edge of the balconies for about 1 meter, making it possible for them to see each other when they are far forward. This won't be clear on this online reading, but I invite you to use your imaginations. And imagine too that every now and then, and particularly between scenes, we hear the moody tones of a homeless sax player busking at the robots outside the complex. And this figure appears live in the show, but you won't be seeing him today. What you will see now are 2 consecutive scenes taken from the first half of the play where the characters are getting to know each other. It starts as Magda ends a call with her father, who's not taking her Omar's COVID symptoms seriously enough. And it's important to know that her Omar brought her up. In other words, her Omar is actually her mom. And now I'd like to hand you over to the actors Nicole Stein and Sipomziwe Lukwaba. Thank you.
Wonder who thought of this incredibly long, thin swimming pool. Single lane highway to nowhere.
You think those fish know they're trapped?
What fish?
It's a fish pond.
Ah. Hey, aren't they supposed to be orange or gold or something? That one there looks like an albino.
How would you like to swim up and down all your life in one narrow strip?
I did for many years, actually. Part of the school swim team. Almost swam for Gauteng, but hockey won. But if I was a fish, I imagine it would be highly problematic.
I'm trying to be a fish right now.
And how is that working for you?
As I thought, it's very wet.
Do you think fish are like dogs? Like they need new territory to sniff or they go out of their minds or something? Like humans in reading. You know, we can't read the same books over and over again.
Do you have dogs?
No, that's an old bit of vendor wisdom.
Oh, really?
No, not really. No, I got copy for dog food once. You know the brand with the surprising name of Woof? Yeah, they gave me all this research. So.
Something terrible is happening.
Yes, this virus is ruining my life.
I think it'll be all right.
You do you? And how do you figure that?
This is week 1. It's just the beginning. So much has happened in the span of 1 week. Who knows where it'll still go?
Well, it can't get much worse for me.
Maybe, but I don't think so.
What? You think there's more shit to come? I'm 80% certain I'm without a job going forward.
Oh, sorry.
My girlfriend won't answer my calls. How much worse can it get?
Okay, that's a lot.
My life is hanging by a thread.
But that thread could be golden.
You know, you are more than weird. Are you always like this?
Like what?
This sort of Walt Disney persona thing.
You've got an aura, a glow, and it's pale now, sort of bluish and bits of soft orange, but that tells me it's usually vivid gold, bright blue, like bold, clear colors. You are usually clear.
So, loosely translated, you have hope for me?
I do.
And what about you?
As long as I'm here, I'm fine.
How come? You know what? Ignore me. I can be nosy too. So.
You know that flat directly opposite us? That's a gay German couple, and they claim you can run 5K on these grounds.
No ways. Where?
Through the west-facing basement parking garage, then across the courtyard and around the long, thin fish pond, then through the east-facing basement, same story, up the stairs and round the back. Apparently, if you can do that 16 times, it's 5K.
Rat in a treadmill. I'd die of boredom.
Well, so it's a good thing you're not a fish then.
Or a dog.
And below them is a young couple with their little son. He's about 2. He's got so much energy. He won't stop moving. He keeps falling in the fish pond.
Try 6 hyperactive kids in a shack in Diepkloof.
Your family.
Nah, we're okay. In a townhouse with a yard.
And next to the Germans is a single black man and his preteen daughter. And she dances a lot. It's like TikTok stuff. Very unusual scenario. I wonder where the mother is.
Why unusual?
You know, black men, absentee fathers, except this time it's the mother. Sorry, is that?
Yeah, just a bit. I've always had both parents, so.
Lucky.
Why lucky?
You know that guy busking by the robot over there? I asked him, why don't you go to one of the shelters they're making for homeless people? And he says it's unsanitary, like too many people and not enough food. He says it's safer for him to be out in the open air, even though he's not making a quarter of what he usually makes. I think he sleeps in the bus shelter. How does such a talented musician end up on the street?
Serious? You want an answer?
I know, but I can't make sense of anything. He has to watch out for police. It's like an apocalypse movie with empty streets and just these ragged, homeless creatures scuttling around, being hunted by police and the army, like the undead. Like if they bit someone, they would infect them with homelessness and poverty.
That's good. Do you mind if I use that?
Genuine. Everything is sliding away from me. I mean, are we turning into a police state? Well, they say benevolent dictatorships can work for a while. Where's your family?
Do you know Brooklyn?
In Gauteng.
Yeah, north of Joey's. Far, far away. We're 1,000 Ks away, actually. In another country. And we fade to black on that note. And now we skip to later on in the day. It's now nighttime. The moon, a full moon, is high in the sky. Magda is on her balcony. She is dancing semi-nude under that full moon. Lefuno is skipping furiously on his balcony. Hey, babe. It's me. Wondering what's up. Musa, call me back, babe, please. All right, bye. I suppose you heard the whole thing. The interview, disaster of the first order. I mean, the jig is up, but instead of telling me the truth, they're making like Trump. It's all gonna be fine. It's gonna go away. We'll be back at work by Easter's. Hallelujah! And there's a 50% chance, he says, that I'm gonna get the job now. You know, I didn't even know this guy from a bar of soap. It was like he was interviewing me from a script. I mean, what the hell? Why are they leaving me hanging like this?
It's a pink moon.
That's orange.
No, it's called a pink moon.
Why?
Seriously?
No, I mean, why half naked? It must be cold. It's autumn.
60% of the human body is made of water.
And?
That puts us... The brain and the heart are composed of, what, 73% water? And the lungs are 78% water? And they say skin is 64% water? And the muscles and kidneys are 79% water? And even the bones are watery.
And?
That makes us in rhythm with the moon.
As far as I know, the moon doesn't have a rhythm.
Do you know what tides are?
Serious? Okay, well, it's the moon's gravitational pull on the waters making the seas come in and go out.
The water in my body is responding to the gravitational pull. Being naked helps.
So if I looked at your body now, it would be making like waves coming in and going out, or what's the story?
I just let my body listen to the pull and then go in that direction.
Like waves all over the place.
Sort of like that, yes.
And what does it do for you?
It makes you one with the cosmos.
Oh, the cosmos. I see. Of course.
With nature, with the essence of all creation, but more than that, with cosmology, with all natural ecosystems, both here and in our universe. I don't know about outside our universe.
And what does it feel like?
Ever done MDMA?
Yes? So?
100 times better than that. Boundaries dissolve. You just disappear. The you that you know or you think you know just becomes water, air, dust, trees, oxygen, clouds, even the bench you're sitting on. Your molecules blend with all other molecules. You just fade away. And that's even more so with a pink moon. I don't know why.
Sounds enviable. Becoming nothing, melting away. How did you discover it?
My online mentor, she's tutoring me and a few other young people in the secret arts.
Secret?
It's crossover, Wicca, and a bit of other stuff.
Oh no, we don't mess with that stuff. My mom is Orthodox Christian.
No consulting sangomas?
Oh, verboten.
Well, don't worry. I'm not going to try and convert you.
Isn't that the only thing that believers do?
We don't believe in it. Look, this is a supermoon. Sorry.
Meaning? It's huge?
You're distracting me from something special. It's bigger than usual because it's closer, and tomorrow it'll start to wane. So this is the moment. Sorry.
You know, you say sorry a lot.
Sorry. Have you finished speaking?
Yeah, sure. Hey, one more thing. Do you think that the moon could be like a gravitational cure for coronavirus or something like that?
Are you making fun of me now?
No, not you. Trump with these makeshift nonsense cures.
Look, I didn't quite paint the whole picture, okay? Us women have a lot of liquid in our wombs.
Huh?
So think about it. All that pull on our wombs, that puts us squarely in sync with the natural forces of the universe.
Wait, are you saying that the moon can make your vibes start sooner?
Period. Or ovulation. There's liquid involved in both.
Serious? Wow.
So, can I?
Yeah, no, by all means. Go ahead. And that's it. See. And one more. Okay, we can't hear what anyone's saying right now, so we're just gonna.
I just hope that we were streaming and we didn't do it for now.
We could hear you, we could see you. It was fantastic. Thank you. We're keeping you online. We're just getting Claire back in.
Okay.
Hi.
There. So, thank you. I know that this, you would have been here, and then due to unforeseen circumstances, you couldn't be here. You had to be isolated. So, but I'm glad we could do it in this way, and that you could still perform. I'm going to start with Tracy this time. It's interesting. This was a play, Claire, that we received many plays about COVID and the situation, and hundreds of those plays. But I think this is the only one we've got at Teksmark that deals kind of with this period and with COVID, because it just stood out as a play that really deals with much more and really uses, COVID becomes the period kind of becomes the vehicle, and we actually beforehand we kind of thought like, okay, let's not do COVID plays. Let's not, let's not deal with it now. We want to move on and not talk about it immediately. But then this play came along, and it's quite incredible. So thank you for writing something that's really contemporary and now and talking to us in a very positive way. Can we, Tracy, you read the whole play, so I would love to hear your comment as well.
Hi, Claire. It's nice to see you on the screen. I think what I liked about it is, although it's set in COVID and it's, got the whole kind of tension of the initial lockdown, that it isn't, the relationship is so real and the character's so kind of intimate and authentic that, even though it's about COVID, it's not about COVID. It's essentially about two young people. And I think also, two young people in a contemporary South Africa dealing with something extraordinarily global and huge and kind of all empowering. But at the end of the day, it's really about just what does it mean for one person, or in this case, two people. And I really like the intimacy of it. And it almost had like not Romeo and Juliet, but obviously the balcony kind of gave it a little bit of that feel. But it had a classic feel and a contemporary feel to it at the same time, which I really enjoyed. Thank you.
I want to ask you, actors, I'm sure there's other comments as well. What was your experience when Claire kind of sent the script to you and, can you still hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We just something just went wrong on this side, but it's good. Just your initial when Claire sent the script to you, and then I think there was a little bit of you also, Claire. I think you also worked with the actors in finalizing the script, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct?
Yeah. Well, yes. We're still busy doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. And from the actors, do you want any comments? Obviously, Claire sent a basic script to you, and then from that, you started working. And what was your response to this?
I'm going to jump in because I think there's a lag on Tigers' end, so I'm just going to hope that he didn't start talking and that we're all screaming now. But I think I remember specifically the first email that I sent to her after I had received the script was I said, she's so eclectic and electric. And the interesting thing about being an actor is the first time you read the script is the only time you can really experience it from the audience perspective. Because after that, you become the character and you analyze the text, and then it's easy to lose that first impression you had. And reading the play for the first time and being introduced to Magda, I remember specifically that at the beginning you're like, oh, she's a bit weird, and by the end she is so precious and fragile, and you can't help but fall in love with this person who is so broken but keeping it together. And I think there's just such a humanness to both of these people that everyone can see bits of themselves and can appreciate just that feeling of like being broken but trying to hold it all together, which is kind of how I think everyone has felt in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, I could jump in on that note as well. I don't know if there's a lot of lag between myself and Nicole, so it could have been 10 minutes since she finished speaking and I'm starting. But no, I really connected with Lefuno's character. There's a lot of stuff that he's going through and pressures that he's putting on himself to a certain extent, and some that are coming from the world around him that I'm very familiar with. He's a young Black man. He's in South Africa at a time when, in the Black community, there's kind of like this pressure on you to, if your parents manage to make the necessary sacrifices to get you into the right school, and then you went to university, you are, the creme de la creme. You are a very fortunate minority, and you need to make that work. And situations where back at home, you're responsible for things that under other circumstances you might be responsible for financially. So this is a guy who has done well in life, but has come to a point where he made one decision that's kind of caused everything to start falling apart. And he's just having an existential crisis because there's all of this pressure that, like, if things fall apart for him, they don't just fall apart for him, they fall apart for his whole family. Basically, how does he navigate that? How does he come out of the identity crisis that he has once it's like he's no longer Lefuno the provider anymore? It's looking like he might not be. Who is he? And how is he going to come out of that? So I connect with him quite a lot.
Thank you. We've got Dion here, and then we've got Cornelia. Let's start with Cornelia. You had your hand opgesteek.
Okay.
You volunteered this time, not forcing you.
I just want to first of all say congratulations to the actors. For most of us, staring at ourselves on a screen is terrifying, and the fact that you managed to act as well was incredible. I really enjoyed that performance. I thought it was beautiful because I can't believe we're already reflecting on the beginning of COVID. I can't believe that so much time has gone past that we're able to reflect on that first week already. And I thought this was a beautiful slice of life. Many of us have been forced under these regulations to forge relationships with people that we didn't know before. And I think it's actually a wonderful little slice of South African life under COVID, and it's beautiful. Thank you.
Actually, and then Dion, it actually worked very well. I had flashbacks watching you on the screen because it's kind of this whole Zoom thing, and then reliving it.
Sorry. Hi, Claire.
Hi.
I think I was similar to Hichu, that in the beginning when I started reading the text, I thought, oh gosh, I don't know if I want to read about COVID. And what I think you really did masterfully was do such an original text and make it so, it completely swung me around that, oh, how nice to read about it in such a fresh manner. And I really liked the way that you captured a contemporary South Africa with these young people and didn't stereotype them. And I just like the freshness and the originality of it and actually dealing with COVID, in COVID. I mean, it is astonishing, Cornelia. So well done. Thank you. And for the actors, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Claire,
Hello.
do you have something to add?
I don't know. It was a great opportunity to actually expose this, because of course anybody who makes theatre knows that it only really starts slotting in as you approach an audience. That moment you start approaching the audience, that's when you start seeing it with the audience's eyes. So it was a great exercise to have to present 10 minutes of it. It really brought it into sharp relief for us. That's number one. Number two, somebody said to me, I think it was Marcel actually, who plays one of the 8 characters. Marcel van Heerden said to me, it's very playful. And it's interesting that, because I think I think what's interesting about it, maybe for some people, is the relationship between the personal life of the writer at the time of writing and the actual product. And in a sense, I was playing young again. I was being young again because I so desperately needed to relieve the isolation I was in. And I created this relationship. I was trying to cheer myself up, I think, with these 2 people that I could enjoy. Yeah. So that's just a comment about process, and how it was. I had to find a way of dealing with my isolation and fear. And it's not so much about fear of the virus itself. It's more fear of utter isolation and change and not knowing what the world is becoming.
I think that's the biggest fear at the moment, is uncertainty in every aspect, is that we don't know what's going to happen and what the world will become. Claire, thank you so much. And it's great. Just tell me, you would have opened next week, if I'm not mistaken, but this has been postponed. So you're going to open when and where?
We are running in Ribe Castile at the Royal, it's called RATA, the Royal...
Artstown Theatre.
Thanks, thank you. Royal Artstown Theatre. And it's on the 17th till the 21st. And the reason why we had to postpone is that poor Sipon Ziwe got COVID. And we had to go into isolation, which is why we're doing this today.
It's been very meta.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm so happy and that you're all fine. And Claire, I just wanted, you are all doing this just so that all the funders know. You are basically funding this whole, you did the rehearsals and everything. This is self-funded. So any help will do, and taking it further to any theatre festival would be fantastic.
It would, thank you. Really, it would.
Yes. Well, thank you. And we wish you were here, but thank you for tuning in, streaming in, whatever you call it.
Thank you, Hugo.
Bye. Goed. Ons is baie goed op tyd. Lisanay, ek is te goed vandag. Sure. Ek is baie beïndruk met myself. So, volgende het ons iets heeltemal anders. En dit is 'n play wat, as ek reg verstaan, wel gedurende lockdown geskryf is en toe sommer baie dinge mee gedoen is. Ek gaan vir Johnny vra om, wil jy eers die uittreksel kyk en dan gaan ons direk gaan ons eers Okay, dinge het verander. Goed, alles reg. Okay, great. So ons gaan direk in die uittreksel in. En die stuk, ek moet dalk net agtergrond verder gee, name is belangrik. So die stuk is Paksla Hiding is die naam of die titel en dit is Johnny Haynes, Chad Bai en Zoe Chetty wat dit saam geskryf het. Ons het baie tyd, julle kan regtig rustig wees. Ek is hopeloos te vroeg. So haal asem, as iemand wil sing, kan iemand sing net 'n liedjie, it's fine. Tyd wen. Kan ek sommer intussen tyd vir julle vra? Ek wil net interessant vra want ons het die gesprek gehad oor obviously is COVID is die groot ding wat nou gebeur het, lockdown, alles wat die impak is. Do you want to see theatre about dealing with COVID? Okay, Cornelia is a definite no, but surely not now.
Van ek wil nie lelik wees nie. Ek wil nou regtig niks gesê het nie, maar I couldn't watch that. I couldn't watch it. So I had to listen to it and make my own pictures in my head. I couldn't watch it like physically. No, it's about looking at a screen again and talking to somebody through a screen again. So I closed my eyes and I had to listen to it. And I mean, it was beautiful performances. And I understand everything, but the trauma is very close. En miskien is ek ook net moeg.
Nee, maar ek moet sê, ek het ook so 'n bietjie, maar ook die content het my so 'n bietjie angstig gemaak en flashbacks gegee. Saartjie? Wat is jou gevoel? Ja. Ja. Maar dit is weird, Saartjie, jy sê nou, ek en Cornelia het vanoggend die gesprek gehad. It kind of felt as I don't have vocabulary, I don't have ek het nie ek moet letterlik I have to restart. En ek het nog nie. So dit is weird. Dit is en Cornelia het ook gesê sy het dieselfde gevoel. So ek dink ons almal voel so it's kind of getting back into a reality. Not even a new, just a kind of reality wat ons nou mee deel en om alles te laat werk. Ja. 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 Wel hoop ek nie al ons funksies nie. Ek is nog okay. I think I'm okay. For now. Ja. 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 Yeah, but I think that's one of the things that is really that and obviously we all knew it, and ons almal het, but we took it for granted. En dinge is die interaksie met is dit wat 'n gehoor vir jou gee, and that you really need them. Nie net vir hulle geld nie. Dank. Ons het julle geld ook nodig. Ons wil hê julle moet vir teater betaal. Maar ons het nodig, dit is julle is deel van 'n hele spel. 'n Gehoor is deel van die hele dinamiek. Ja. Ja. Absolutely. Now, Claire was very disappointed that I couldn't do it live here because the whole play is about being in that, but not it being through a screen and being live connection with an audience and having that relationship. So miskien kan ons beter deel met COVID-related plays as ons actually met mekaar sit en praat. Are you ready? Great! Over to you.
God van nieuwe dingen, nieuwe dingen, nieuwe dingen. Mijn God is de God van nieuwe dingen. God, doen de nieuwe dingen.
Can't you see I'm here? This was what? I'm unpacking the stuff. What stuff? You always do this. You see, this is why I start directing because you just mess everywhere. Me mess everywhere? Yeah, you know what? Yeah. Don't come here and start complaining. Complaining about what? I'm literally doing all the work. His name? Can you stop the monkey? And I can't put the dog in the room. Fine. If I say couple to Mr. Tyson sheets, then that's on me. I don't know what I want to do anymore. You think I know what I want to do? Okay, what do you want to do, Diana? Don't say it. Oh my word, what? Just leave me alone. Leave you alone? Why must I not be my auntie here? I am busy trying to clean up the mess that you clearly made when I was going to sort out everything. Joe, baby? Joe? Excuse me, we don't have to keep making this nonsense. Shh. Focus now. Oh, listen. Are you focusing? Just making me all nice by you now. Oh my word! Do you remember this? Who's that? Honey, mine. And mine? Remember she was there into church for the first time and we had to die afterwards? Oh, Johnny, mine! There's a lot. That's when she's on the bed and she grieved. People moved in her face. My little boo, Jackie. You look like you're walking through it too. You're only grade 2 that time. It's the worst time of my life. I just felt so insecure. Big nose, big lips. Small ears and smaller eyes, especially when I smile. And the girls were all over my face. And I used to let my mommy buy my clothes. And she used to buy me the cheapest no-name brands. And that time I'm not getting no name brands or and stuff. Come so one day.
Eu lembrei que was going on.
So, Valentine's Day is around the corner. I was just wondering. I went all the way to the bus stop to get my pretty lady something from the Dutch shop. I got you this pink little TV and 1, 2, 3, 4 chocolate eclairs. Lacy next morning for my happy little because I love you more. Can I take you to the 5 store? So come on, pretty lady, won't you be my baby? I wanna make you mine, so please be my Valentine. Why would I want to be your Valentine? Look how you look! You look like a Yeah, those girls were kind of straightforward. But that day, I came home and I told my mommy, Mommy, I know to pick my A clearer. And you want to know why? Why? Nee, niks. Reebok spelen naar dus. Niks. Reebok spelen naar dus. Us, ja.
Maar as jy my kan was, sal ek jou al lank geneem. Maar ek sal nie dat jy maak dit. Jy moet hier katjies doen. Zondag voor lunch. Lekker. Ja, mami, ons gaan dit nie maak nie. Daar's ook baie goed om uit te maak. Ja, mami. Ja, mami. Okay. Maybe we can come to the 11 o'clock service.
Lena, I told you we're not going.
Okay. Love you too. See you, Dad. Bye. Sean, what am I supposed to say?
Exactly what I told you to say.
Anyway, she wants us to be there.
I'm not going.
You are going.
I'm not going.
Yes.
No.
Why? Why, Matthew? It's for my mother. It's for us. And please don't say why did you keep going? You said if I keep going, I could get in the choir. I'll even give my own solo. What? What?
Elena, you moved into this house. Not your mother, and definitely not 3 stars. I'm the man of this house. Really? I'm the man of this house.
Maybe we'll start looking for money to you. Then you can be the man of this
Van 'n stoel is van 'n stoel is ja. Ja. Dis 2 en dan is nog 3 nodig, ja. Definitief. Dankie. Julle is die 2 broers, né?
Yes.
Ja, dis bietjie obvious, I know. Ek wil net seker maak ek sien nie dubbel nie. Ons kan net gou vir julle stoele dat julle daar kan sit. Ja. Gaan julle saam wees in die conversation? I think so. I'm sure you've got something to contribute. Ek wil sommer 'n disclaimer sit. Gewoonlik so with Teksmark we don't do adaptations are not allowed if it's still too close to if it's more like just a translation or just changing the setting or something like that. But the panel felt that this was completely a new play, and although it was inspired obviously by Busman and Liela, correct? Yes. But it was far enough from the original so that it can stand on its own as a new play, and it was actually, it got very wonderful responses from the panel about this young, vibrant kind of look at the old classic actually. So over to you. I think we've got some, where's the mics now? Oh, here we go. Hulle gaan nou maar met een mic moet werk.
Okay, I'm going to start, but because this is our project, we'll all be speaking basically on it. Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, my name is Johnny Haynes.
Hi, my name is Chad Bai.
Hi, my name is Michael Human.
Hi, I'm Zoe Chetty.
And I'm Joshua Human.
Great. I'm actually really glad that Hugo mentioned the thing about Busman and Liena, because it's sort of been a part of just the initial process. So obviously this is workshop. So how we started out is we actually read Busman and Liena, because Chad came to me and he was like, we want to do Busman and Liena. And from this reading emerged this discussion about the themes and ideas that sort of are like talked about in Busman and Liena. And we just started talking about our own experiences and their experiences. And so we realized we're not going to do Busman and Liena. We're going to do our own story. So while Busman and Liena, they are these vagabonds, right, that move from space to space. With this creation through workshop and obviously discussions and improvisations, etc., emerged these two characters, Matthew and Liena. And they find themselves cultural vagabonds in the metropolis that is Cape Town. So it's this idea of moving from one space to the other. What does it mean? What does it mean in terms of culture, identity? What do I grasp onto? What do I let go of in terms of building community and sort of identifying myself? So, and then just a little thing about the name. It's a little bit of a word play, obviously. Pakslaw, the word pak in Afrikaans meaning om uit te pak, to pack in and out, which is quite literally they're moving into this house. And then pakslaw also meaning hiding, which is kind of speaks to the violent interaction that happens between these two characters. We had a discussion. This play speaks very much about colored identity and how there's this notion of broad brushing and giving a general sort of, yeah, you're colored. but they are actually so different. These two characters are intrinsically different, and so then that clash is what we want to explore in this play. And so, yeah, I'll give over to Michael, and you can talk about one of those clashes.
Yes, one of the themes that we want to bring across is the thought of identity and how we see the world, how we see ourselves. And identity is quite a broad topic, but we specifically want to portray how the church has a huge part in our identity, especially between these two characters. We have a scene in the play where we show these two characters singing or worshiping in their style, things that they do in their church, and it's so different. And in the beginning, we see them unpacking things about their identity in church, what the church has told them who they are, how you should dress, how you should speak, how you should talk to the Lord, and it's so different. And especially when it comes to religion, when things are so different, sometimes we don't want to listen. We just want to say, no, this is wrong, this is right. You need to change, or this is what I believe is what is right. And it is so challenging when we see that in the play, when we're looking at Lena and Matthew, how they struggle to accept, even how to, let's say, compromise and listen to one another when it comes to church and how they do church, and try, instead of learning from one another, they want to say, no, my way is better. And that is a challenge that we all face, especially in our color culture, because the way I do church is way different to the rest of, yeah. Oh, see you, okay.
Okay, one of our other themes is race and racism. And the play kind of speaks about how this affects this couple specifically, because it's after apartheid and we are a different generation, and we experience racism in a completely different way. For example, in one of our scenes, Matthew and Helena are busy talking about one of these experiences they had when they were at Spur, and how they experienced or witnessed racism. And they sort of use humor as a coping mechanism instead of speaking up about all these political issues. And I feel like, from what I've experienced, a lot of colored people are quite submissive in saying, oh, this is wrong, or people shouldn't be treated that way. And so I think that's just one of our other themes, is just making sure that we show that the colored community needs to speak up more and not just be quiet.
Oh, hello everyone. Like I said, I'm Chad. So one of the other themes that we do focus on is gender roles, masculinity. And as you can see, so Matthew, which is the character that I played just now, he comes from a place where, how he was brought up is like, there's a way that the house is being, how the house is organized, like, so who's on top? The father's always on top, father always has the last say. So that's what he was. He grew up seeing that. He didn't necessarily see dad as much. You always see mom doing everything. Mom's always doing the dishes, the clothes. Mom's taking care of everything. Mom's taking care of the children. But dad's the breadwinner, right? So this is what us as like young, and I'm sure many other races also go through it. But what I've seen as Chad now, like growing up as a young colored boy, I looked up to my father so much that I wanted that to be my life. So, and I feel the way that Matthew behaves now, as he grows older, he hides behind this title of being the man or the man of the house, but he doesn't necessarily how can I say, own up to all the responsibilities that come behind it. So it's because the theme or the title, man or being a man, has so much power in our world that it's so easy just to say it, but are you actually being it? And that's what I see most of us as youngsters, like we losing sight of what it actually is to be a man, and we have this picture in our head of what it's supposed to be, and it's so easy just to say that, yeah, I'm the man, this is how things are supposed to be done. And that is how we've been brought up, because that's how things have been going. But the world is changing, and I'm happy to say that women are finding their identity in with who they can be, and not being dependent obviously on men, and seeing that they can do it by themselves. But I think men, well, young men, like we've become used to what we know as what a man is supposed to be, and we become comfortable with it, and we do not want to listen to anything else, and we do not see that as a problem or as an issue. But I find myself as Chad by asking myself, what is a man? Like, what does it mean to be a man? Because as the world goes on, like the expectation of being a man, like it kind of like it, yeah, it lowers, like the standards goes down and down, and you're a man just because you have, sorry, I don't know if I can say that, but yeah, and we losing sight. And I and Matthew so badly wants Lena to see him as this man, and we see him as what he pictures himself to be, but he doesn't see her for who she is and what she means. And the fact that the only reason he can call himself a man or looks like a man to the rest of the world is because of how she has actually been taking care of him. But she has to hide behind his light. She has to, but she's the one that's doing all the work. If you get what I'm saying, like what I've learned from Matthew is, and when we wrote this thing, I realized, well, we're not that very specific on what is a man and what a man's supposed to be. But what I've realized is that I definitely do not want to become a man or the man that Matthew thinks he's supposed to be. I would like to be on a neutral level, and I find that I can still be a man and allow my woman to be the woman that she's supposed to be. That's what I have to say.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of topics, but very specifically, like as they also touched on, what is the young person's perspective on all of this? Yeah, like what does it mean for them as a young couple coming together? So I just want to quickly run through practicals of the production. So the production is about 30 to 35 minutes long. It's a mixture between like 70% English and then like 30% Afrikaans. And then obviously this would be the size of the cast. And then it was written with a really rich musicality in mind. Like as you can see from the excerpt and even the rest of the play, it has to be quite musical. The actors have to be vocally strong. So it needs to have that sort of sound to it. And then just another thing, I don't know if we actually have the trailer available or if it is up and running, but I just thought I would mention it. Over the lockdown period, obviously, I mean, we didn't know if we would actually be able to perform this. So sort of out of necessity, we then all came together and we filmed this thing in my garage. And yeah, and it's now a digital film theater in between. It's sort of like very experimental between film theater and short form. So we're really excited about that. And I would love to show the trailer. I don't know if it's possible. Is it possible? Yeah. Yeah. So if we can watch that, that would be great. It's just the versatility of the project. And I suppose, you know, I had to start asking myself, how do we make theater in these circumstances, you know? Yeah. I would love to hear other people's thoughts on that as well.
not your mother and definitely not Priest Thomas. I'm the man of this house, man. I'm the man of this house.
Maybe when you start making more money than me, then you can be the man of this house.
Ja, dis eintlik dit van ons af, ja.
Dis 'n fantastiese die almal anders nou weggaan. O, daar sit jy. I thought you just ran away. I first want to say it's you all associated with the Waterfront Theatre School, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yes. Or final year.
That various years. They're
Various
actually
years.
first year, these two.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic that all of you started collaborating and that you started with an idea and then started working together and you come with such energy and and inspiration that it all, I think when we all read the play, it kind of just bounced off the paper. And it's just wonderful. You're inspiring. And you did all of this in the past 3 months, 4 months. Yeah, incredible. Thoughts. I think I'm going to start with the people who read the play from beginning to end. So let's start with Dion and Tracy.
Hi. I love the idea that it's a play for young people. I think there's not enough of that around, but it also includes older people because we want to know what young people think and how they operate and at different cultures. I really think that's lovely. And I love as Ihu says, that you're sort of thinking on your feet in the sense of, oh, are we going to be able to play and then make a film? And I think that is how we have to operate now. As Sarki says, it's a new world we don't know, and we need the young to have the energy to show. So well done.
Baie dankie.
Met Tracy too.
Yeah, also I really like the springboard from Busman and Leonard, which is one of my favorite plays. So it resonated, and that sense of what does home mean, especially now at a time when people are trying to remake a home, and what does it mean to individual people? And watching Chad, it's been so great to see you on stage, Chad, because I've watched you right from your first year of studies, and it's just amazing to see you grow. And the idea that theatre is a hybrid now, that we're looking at making something into film. And I think this is a piece that can work equally well on stage and on film, and the way that it incorporates in the musicality and all of your multi-talent, your multi-talent. So well done.
Thank you.
Dokumentaar van iemand anders af. En Chad, you're allowed to say penis. Is that what you wanted to say? Yeah, just saying. I think we're allowed to. That hasn't changed post-COVID, I think. So, Fraser.
Ek wil vir julle sê, julle is gevaarlik hoor. It's very encouraging to see. I know that the youth of today, they don't ask permission, which is amazing, because we've got all this infrastructure of technology, and you fully incorporating it and using it, and not waiting for anybody to give you a thumbs up. So hou aan met dit en skryf hy stories en julle is die future, en die collaborations is a huge encouragement for theatre, en ons het baie om te leer by die youth, want ek dink mense vra altyd wat gebeur nou met na COVID, but dis wat gebeur tydens COVID en dis wat gaan gebeur na COVID. So julle is a beacon of hope, and obviously you're showing the direction of where we're heading to eventually. Julle bring al twee daai platforms bymekaar en julle het vir niemand gevra nie. Congratulations, julle is gevaarlik.
Thank you. Did you have any? I mean, this wasn't for your for die praat of it wasn't for you just did it because you felt you needed to do something and.
No, not at all. I think it came actually from just a desire to do a bit of straight theatre and just creating our own work, essentially. And I should also say, this has been a 2-year process, actually. We started reading Busman and Lena, writing the script about 2 years ago. Wanted to do it, we got busy, we got jobs, and so then this year we wanted to do it at the beginning of the year and then COVID. And then it was kind of just one of those things of let's just finish it because we started it. So I think, and I remember last year at Teksmark, Wessel said such a wonderful thing. He said he wishes that he has the privilege of letting a project just sit and simmer for a period. And the amount of your growth, I think, that happened in this project was amazing. When we came back to it, a year later, it was kind of like, we rewrote a lot of it, and we edited a lot, and ended up adding a lot more to it. So that was really cool also to witness. So yeah.
It's fantastic. Last comments. There we go.
Can I just ask you what you said the length of the piece was how long?
So it's about 30 to 35 minutes. When we filmed it, that was how it ran. I predict that on a stage, it might be slightly longer.
Yes, it just struck me there's enough meat and play and themes there to build it into a longer piece. So I was just wondering about that.
No, absolutely. I think there's definitely more potential with the script if, because we've also seen that it can actually work in a short form structure. I think there's definitely potential for it to be rewritten, but entirely with that medium in mind. So writing it as a film, you know what I mean? Because at the moment it's a theatre piece. So I think that could potentially be really interesting.
Which route do you want to go with this? I mean, do you prefer it as a theatre piece or
yeah, absolutely. That's our first love.
Yeah.
Like, definitely.
Just checking.
Ek wil net vra, are you going to be writing more music and more songs around the story?
Leon wants to know about music and now you're going to write more.
And the reason why I'm saying that is when that first chord went, I was like, yeah. My mense, ek is like, dis van nog 'n musical man.
So the plans to if we're going to like make this play, expand it a little bit to make it a bit longer in time and add more dialogue, add more things, definitely we will be writing more songs. The song Valentine was Chad, you and Johnny. Okay, they wrote that. Oh yes, there is another song where Lena and Matthew are singing the same song. They're in church. She's singing it very classical style, old apostolic, and then he sings the same song, but then it's like jazz punkster, and he's doing all the. Oh, okay. And then they try to actually sing it at the same time, and it's just horrible. It's like it was hard for Joshua and I to play because we were like, it's different tempos, and I'm like, Joshua, stop playing with me. Go to your same tempo, and then it's like it's really confusing. And there's a part where they actually start to sing together, and this was a potential for them. They're actually listening to one another, but then they choose not to, and. Yeah.
But I feel instead of telling us, why don't you just show us?
You want to try?
No. I'm putting them on the spot.
Yes, it's about, there's more music to it. And then if we're going to expand it more, Joshua and I are very, very keen to writing more music to it. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's wonderlijk. It's van julle teachers hier now.
Paul's in the audience.
Where's Paul? Yeah. Hello, Paul. You must be very proud of your students. Incredible. Dankie julle. Right, ek is terwyl ons die volgende setup, ek dink ons gaan nou na ons laaste play vir die dag. En dit is Caitlin Wiggle se teks Love Lefras. Caitlin? Okay, Caitlin, we must just get you a microphone. So just wait a little bit. And then I can do the setup at the back in the meantime. That's fine. And slowly do this changeover. Take your time.
Hi. A little bit scary being the last piece of the day, but also quite cool. I can hardly see all of you, so I don't know who I'm looking at, but hi. Okay, so my piece is called Love Lefras, and it is based on my actual family. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on that. So I have a very ghosty family. I think that ghosts, in our kind of very filmic sense of what they are, is quite scary. But I don't think that ghosts are scary. I think that ghosts are memory. And so I think my family is very much full of ghosts, as I think everyone else's is. You just have to be willing to see them and to interact with them. So Lefras was my grandfather's uncle. His wife was Gertie, and they were very, very, very much in love. And they never had children, so they lived their entire life, just the two of them together, completely devoted to one another. And then Lefras tragically died, and Gertie was obviously completely shattered. And so was the rest of the family, because they were super worried about her. And then Gertie showed up at the funeral, and everyone was like, "Oh, Gertie, I'm so sorry." And they were saying lovely things about Lefras, because he was genuinely a wonderful man. And she was saying, "Oh, you're saying such nice things about him. I'm going to tell him when I get home." And they all thought that she had gone crazy because he had died and she'd lost kind of her main partner in crime. And then eventually it carried on with her referencing him as if he was alive. And they sent the dominee from Antithetical to go and check on her, do a home check, because they were very worried about her. And the dominee was the person they could think of who could maybe really, really help her, you know, because they were church-going people and everything. And the dominee walked into the house, saw Lefras in his armchair, basically had a heart attack, and everyone was like, "Oh, okay, Lefras is around." And then my grandmother saw him, my mother saw him as a child. So yeah, this has always been a story that has existed in my kind of, a lot of the, you know, your family will always tell stories. And all of the stories that my family repeatedly tells are the ghost ones. So this is just one of them. So I interviewed my grandmother and my mother, and I decided, okay, Lefras needs to speak, Gertie needs to speak. I did change some of the story just a little bit because you want it to be good theatre. But yeah, I'm not going to give you too much on what's going to happen in the play, because I think afterwards, I don't want to ruin things. So the extract that you're going to see, it's 4 different little scenes. And the last scene is a jump in time. So it's a few months in advance. And yeah, it's a few months after they've kind of been reunited when he makes his ghostly reappearance and has his second life. So that's my story. Fluit, my story is uit. I'm going to go to the lighting box, and then I will talk to you after you have seen it. I hope you enjoy it.
Yes, I understand. Yes. Lilies? White? No, I don't want pink lilies. Because pink weren't his favorite. They smell like cheap perfume. They have to be white. I won't let the smell of cheap perfume be there when I say goodbye to my husband. I don't care if they're more expensive. I don't care if they're difficult to find. Listen to me. I will sell my house if I have to, okay? I'm sorry, but I have to have white lilies. If I can't have white lilies, then what's the point? I'm sorry. They have to be white. And no sad music. You would hate that. Thank you. He never said, I love you. Not once. He didn't have to. He just did. Always. Everyone, when you last first understood that. If he didn't tell you, when he came to fix your flat tire, or he fixed your sink, or well, the squeaky door, he loved you. He loved all of us. I don't know if the world can be good again without that. That takes you for a drive on Sundays. That always makes an extra sandwich. That makes the bed. Writes you letters. I wish that I kept all of those letters. I remember them all. But in the business of life, some of them disappeared. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not saving every second of memory. Every grocery list, every tissue, every conversation. I can read you this though. Hello, love. I don't want to wait. I'm leaving to see Johan. We'll be back around 2. Maybe a walk to the park. Love. Love first. Maybe one day we will walk to the park again. In the meantime, I will keep loving you.
Okay.
I should have said it again. A long time ago. Because I mean it. I need to say it. I love you. I always have. I love you, I love you, I love you. And I never ever want to be without you. I'll always be here. I love you.
I thought you were going forever.
I was too scared.
Where are you? The other side. What did you see? Was there anyone there? God?
No, not heaven, not hell. But maybe there was a bit of heaven because the only images I could see were the images of you. You are the God of mine.
I couldn't stand them seeing you.
I would pray now to say thank you, but there was nobody there except you. And you know I'm not good at praying.
I got those sausages you like. I know you can't taste them. I'll fry them a little longer and add some garlic, and then at least you can smell them. I saw Linda in the spa. She's looking good. She told me the kids are begging for a puppy. I told her, Linda, life is short. Get the puppy! I don't think that's the advice she wanted to hear. Not at all.
Getty!
The little one was standing right next to me. He definitely heard me, so good luck, Linda! What? Yes? What?
I don't care.
What do you mean?
I'm too weak. I can't.
What is happening?
I don't know. How I feel.
What? How do you feel?
I feel like I did know. I don't know.
You can't again. You can't heal again. Can you?
No, I don't think so. Maybe.
Don't leave me again.
I don't want to.
Good.
Caitlin. It's a nice cry in the afternoon.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Antoinette and Andre.
Yeah, thank you to both of them. They were fantastic to work with. It was really a privilege. You.
So what happens at the end of your play?
Yes. So that last scene where Lefras couldn't stand up, already you can see that she's saying he can't taste anything. So what starts to happen is that he can't sustain his form anymore. So in the beginning, he's perfectly solid, like a normal person who's alive. But he can't stay there forever. The laws of the universe just work against them. And so he starts fading. The first thing to go is his taste, and he becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. And she ends up becoming like his carer. And they discover that he can't leave the house. So they try and try and try to get him out there living, and so that other people don't think she's crazy, and it just doesn't work. And then eventually he's bedridden, and he starts not being able to hear her or feel her touching him, and she starts to not be able to feel his touch either. And that's very scary for the both of them. And so Gertie comes to the decision that she doesn't want to live if Lefras is not going to be around. Yeah. And she tells him, obviously, as her partner, who she tells everything to, and it's their first fight, is that he doesn't want her to die because he knows how dying feels. And so she starts to break everything in their house, and she loses her shit. And she basically says, fuck everything, nothing else matters, you're the only thing that I care about. And so it's kind of like a sore point between them. And so they stop almost talking for a little while, and then they just stop bringing it up. And eventually he gets so weak that he can't fight against her. He can't argue with her. He's literally just bedridden. It's like he's in a coma, and all he can use is his eyes. And the whole ending is like a massive, basically like a 10-minute silent sequence where she has her last cup of tea. She cleans up her house. She packs everything neatly for everyone to find. She drinks a whole bottle of sleeping pills. She climbs in bed next to him, tells him that she loves him, and says goodnight. And then we wake up the next morning and it's just her body left. So yeah, they join each other in the other side. Yeah, so yeah, it's
sort of
quite a story. Yeah, and there's two other characters currently. Henrietta, who is Gertie's niece, who she's quite close to, and then the Duomini, obviously, who keeps trying to tell Gertie that he's a demon and she must ignore him. So yes, that's currently how it's sitting.
And the play is fully written, it's done.
No, the entire structure exists. I'm not yet in my final draft of it. I would say it is about halfway to 3/4 of the way through currently. And I'm also thinking about the possibility of having it translated into Afrikaans, because they are actually Afrikaans people. I just speak English as my thought process. So I think I might actually end up getting it translated, just for them to speak with their actual voices, yeah. Because they are Afrikaans people, yeah. Okay. Gertie and Lefras.
Your family as well?
Yes. My dad is English and my mom is Afrikaans. It's her family, yeah.
All right.
So their surname is Skuman. Okay. Yeah, they are very Afrikaans PE people. Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's their thing, yeah.
You always come with these surprises. Every year you bring these very emotional pieces to Teksmark.
Sorry.
And it happens to pop in. We try and give other people a chance, and then you come with all your emotions.
It's a lot going on.
Love stories and beautiful work.
Thank you.
Comments. Tracy's got something to say.
I can't see you. I can't see you, but I can hear you. I know you're that side. Now I can see if I do this. Okay. Hi.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's a saying about loss is the price you pay for love.
Mm.
And I mean, for me, grief is something that always just sits below the surface of everything all the time anyway.
Yeah.
And I think this deals just so acutely with how grief does just live with you, whether it's in a ghostly form and the way you embody the relationship and what was there before and what continues after. Kind of like a body leaves a space. For me was just so, so beautiful. And to see older people having a life outside of, loving and living and dying and making the death kind of part of love. It was just lovely.
Thank you so much. I purposefully, part of the reason why this story kind of was one I wanted to tell now, because I've had it for forever from little, was wanting to see older people having roles other than grandparents. And Gertie and Lefras are not grandparents. They don't have children. So for them, they're all the other one has. And so they still feel as young as they always have. And part of him coming back kind of results in a second almost honeymoon for their marriage, because it's just this gratefulness that it can endure, that their kind of connection can break whatever physical boundaries exist in the world. You know, I don't think anyone in my family has ever loved as much as them. It's uncanny, you know, you can't explain it. Yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah.
So optimistic.
The chair.
No,
Oh my God.
I want to ask you, set-wise, are you, do you think, are you keeping it very, in your head, is it very simple kind of, or do you have things moving in, a house on a, I don't know, what do you call it?
A revolve is a beautiful
revolve.
thing.
Do you have your whole house with a revolve and everyone appears, or is it very simple?
I think it's a challenge to keep it very simple, and I like a little bit of a challenge, even though I get very frustrated with myself. But yeah, in my mind, there's definitely areas in the house. So there's, you know, like a living room, TV room, and Lefras's chair is very symbolic. That's why we chose to use the chair. This isn't his actual chair. I don't think he would have this pattern, but it's a beautiful chair, because that in real life, that was his thing. No one else was allowed to sit in that chair. And that was the only time she got angry, was when someone used his chair. So his chair is definitely the center point of everything that happens. But there is a kitchen kind of area where she makes her tea, washes her dishes. But I don't want to use walls and things like that. I want to see everything, because I'm also interested in like the life that exists in a space that's off of the main action or adjacent to, because I think the background story is just as important. So I think that's also part of why I chose to direct it now, because I know all of the silent things that happen. And I think that those little silent things would be even more extended in like a full version of everything. Yeah. I hope that answers a bit.
Does?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it can go either way, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, it could be
strip it
either
down.
way. I think design-wise, you could go in a million different directions and play with whatever you wanted to, but the script itself, I think, is open to, yeah.
The chair on the back here and travel everywhere.
Yeah.
It's much easier. Saiki has got a comment question. And there was another hand up. No?
Sure. It's very warm up here. Oh, my word. It's like the poor actors.
Thank you. I don't know if it was just me, but I kind of felt somebody here.
Did you?
Yes. I think
that's cool.
No.
If anyone has ghost stories, come tell me. I love them.
No. I think you've channeled something here.
Okay.
And I think it's beautiful, and it's wonderful to see the grey heads.
Yeah, I love seeing that as well.
Yeah, I don't know if you should have other characters.
Okay.
I think
Cool.
you're onto something here that
With
can
just
have a
them,
long
yeah.
life, and will touch people in ways that will comfort people.
Okay, that's very cool. Comfort.
It's beautiful work.
I'm going to think about it, because I think, what Tracy is saying about how grief grief has a life. And I think grief is also inherited in a way, like as trauma, because grief is trauma. And I think we don't often speak about things, and we don't often speak about what happens when someone dies, and how a funeral kind of is helpful in some ways, but maybe is re-traumatizing in a sense. Because I think for Gertie, it's a little bit traumatizing to stand in front of everyone and talk about him as if he isn't. Because I think a lot of the time when someone dies, you still feel like they're part of you. They live in you. They're never going to leave. We have the ghosts of everyone collected here. So yeah, I think they carry that baggage from other people as well. So that's interesting about just the two of them. I'm going to look at it. Thank you. I'm going to think. Yeah, no, 100%. I understand. The economy is in a state.
You are obviously talking here to do festival.
Yeah.
People.
You're like
smaller
travel.
traveling sets.
Less
2 actors, not
accommodation.
3. Let's keep it affordable, then this has got a life. It's fantastic.
I feel it, yeah. I'm going to look at that, because I think there's something, interesting about just them relying on each other.
Still another comment from someone. No one going gone. Thank you.
Okay.
Liefde Lafras.
Thank you. Liefde Lafras. Thank you.
Okay. I can take it. I'll take the top. There we go. Thank you, Caitlin. All right, we're quickly taking a 10-minute break. If everyone can be back at past. So just a quick wee break and coffee.
Just having me to go. Hi, hi, Mr. Dersovics. It's a great pleasure to have you here with us. I'm speaking to the author of The Death of the Artist, How Creators Are Struggling to Survive in the Age of Billionaires and Big Tech. I'm just going to read us a short excerpt to set the scene and the tone of the book. There are two stories you hear about making a living as an artist in the digital age, and they are diametrically opposed. One comes from Silicon Valley and its boosters in the media. There's never been a better time to be an artist, it goes. If you've got a laptop, you've got a recording studio. If you've got an iPhone, you've got a movie camera. GarageBand, Final Cut Pro, all the tools are at your fingertips. And if production is cheap, distribution is free. It's called the internet. YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Kindle Direct Publishing. Everyone's an artist. Just tap your creativity and put your stuff out there. Soon, you too can make a living doing what you love, just like all those viral stars you read about. The other story comes from artists themselves, especially musicians, but also writers, filmmakers, people who do comedy. Sure, it goes, you can put your stuff out there, but who's going to pay you for it? Digital content has been demonetized. Music is free, writing is free, video is free, even images you put up on Facebook or Instagram are free, because people can and do just take them. Everyone is not an artist. Making art takes years of dedication, and that requires a means of support. If things don't change, a lot of art will cease to be sustainable. I think this has never been more true than it is now during the pandemic and the shutdown. And although you wrote the book before the shutdown, I just want to know how you think the current situation has exacerbated the plight of artists.
It's exacerbated it in almost every respect you can think of. I think the first thing to say is that because digital content has been demonetized, artists have been urged and encouraged to switch their revenue streams to things that can't be digitized, most obviously physical objects and live experiences. Obviously, you can't do it. I mean, especially live experiences. I mean, musicians are told to play 200 dates a year, for example. Obviously, you can't do any of that now. The kinds of side jobs, day jobs that artists typically do to make ends meet have also been largely shut down. Obviously, I'm speaking from the American experience. I assume things are roughly similar elsewhere. That's, you know, food service work, driving for ride-hailing companies, things like that. Arts organizations have seen their revenue models collapse. You know, galleries, museums, obviously theaters, any kind of live performing arts organization. One of the biggest themes that I talk about in the book is that kind of the middle tier of both individuals and institutions have been continuously eroded over the last 20 years. We're seeing that accelerating during the pandemic. So independent music venues. In the United States, someone who runs an independent music venue said that he thinks that if the pandemic continues into next year, he said this a couple of months ago, 90% of independent music venues could go out of business. Mid-tier galleries are closing. These are the kinds of institutions that help, first of all, that mid-tier artist, which is the bulk of, you know, actual working artists, you know, people who aren't superstars and people who aren't just sort of struggling or beginning. And also, you know, and also help those beginners kind of, you know, those are like the middle rungs of the ladder. Those are the institutions that help you get to the point where you can be a mid-tier artist in the first place.
And you speak about the American experience, but I think we've had almost identical experience in South Africa, probably even slightly worse, because I think the artists started off on an even worse footing here. And there's this notion here, and I think it's been echoed in places like the UK, whereas artists should just retrain or get an additional job or an additional job stream. And, you know, as you were saying, that for many artists, that's already their reality. Most of them are already doing 2 or 3 jobs plus their creative work. And those other jobs that they relied on are no longer there. When you set out to write the book, I mean, obviously you didn't know there was a pandemic coming, or maybe you did. But, you know, do you think there's Do you think there's any hope?
I'm always people often ask me that, and I think people tend to ask people who write books like this that question. I don't know, people are sort of looking to be told that there's hope. I'm not by nature a hopeful person. I worry that hope can be a form of magical thinking. I don't think that if there's hope, it doesn't lie in telling artists to just retrain themselves. I mean, aside from the fact that that's kind of a really dense sort of suggestion to make to people, it also leaves open the question of who's going to make art. I mean, that might solve the problem for someone who's an artist who's trying to support themselves. But if all the artists retrain themselves and do something else, then there isn't going to be a culture. I mean, I end the book with a chapter that talks about ways that artists are organizing in the United States to try to get a better economic deal in the internet age. I think that's a source of potential hope or improvement. But I also say in that chapter that more broadly, I think the tech monopolies that are responsible for so many of the problems need to be restrained. I mean, I feel bad for people in other countries because these are American companies and the best shot is for the American government to do something about this. The monopolies need to be broken up and the platforms need to be regulated like utilities. The good news is that actually there's increasing sentiment in the United States, and not just from the bottom up. Even the Justice Department, even the House of Representatives are beginning to do this. But to reiterate, artists have ways to organize. And that includes organizing against the very nonprofit institutions that provide them with so much of their living. Those institutions themselves often undervalue artists financially and assume that artists should be willing to work for free, or should be willing to work for love, or should be willing to work for much less money than they should be paid for the services that they're rendering.
When you talk about organizations, one of the other things you speak about in the book is, art with a capital A, or, art as, and how we view art now, and how it can be viewed as something that, speaks both to politics and against politics. Do you think that the current prevailing political systems in the United States and that are now kind of stretching globally can have an impact? And do you think there's a role for audiences to play in kind of getting the tech monopolies to give artists a fairer deal? Because if artists themselves can't lobby and aren't a big enough body, is there any chance that the audience, who seem to be in larger numbers than artists, could have a chance?
Yeah, to take the second question first, yes, I think the audience definitely needs to get involved. We've had a food movement, and again, I assume it's not just in the United States, where 20, 30 years ago, people started to talk about the modern food system and what it was doing to not just to animals and farmers and the soil and the water, but also what it was doing to us physically. We were eating processed food, we were eating fast food, and a food movement started that was both at the consumer level in terms of demanding, organic, sustainable food, but it also started to reshape some of the way the food system is structured, because if there's enough of a consumer movement, it starts to have a political effect. I would like to see something like that happen in the arts. I think it needs artists to lead it. I think it needs artists to get out there and explain to their audience, look, this is the financial reality of our lives, starting with the fact that, yes, art and money have something to do with each other. And even though we don't like to think of money in connection with art, we have to do that. In terms of your first question, what I was saying was, that art with a capital A, the way we think about art today, is not an eternal conception. It's an aspect of the transformations that we call modernity that started to gather force in the 18th century. And part of this conception is that art is the place where we go for truth, for spiritual meaning, and for one of the main places we go for political opposition, to articulate sort of new imaginative possibilities. I see that under threat for a couple of reasons, actually, one of which I didn't really write about in the book. The first one is the market itself, and the fact that the more that artists are thrown into the market and have to have an eye, not just an eye on the market, but both eyes on the market all the time, and are constantly asking themselves when they make work, is this going to sell? Is this going to sustain me? That obviously is a huge barrier to making work that's challenging to the audience in any sense, cognitively, imaginatively, politically challenging. The other problem, which I think is related to this, quite frankly, is what in the United States we used to call political correctness. I mean, I consider myself a person on the left. I consider myself progressive, but I think I look in horror at the left-wing orthodoxy that has taken hold of progressive, especially progressive cultural and media institutions that are enforcing one particular line when it comes to identity politics and to everything else in society. And artists themselves, at least in this country, are complaining about it, or at least as loudly as they dare to, because they feel that they can no longer step outside of that ideological consensus. And we have to remember that the job of art is not just to question, you know, the evil right-wing authoritarians. It's also to question and challenge us. James Baldwin says that artists and revolutionaries both see society from an angle, but in many ways they're fundamentally opposed. And revolutionaries of every description tend to want to keep their artists in check, if not silenced. And we have to push back against the authoritarianisms on the left as well as on the right.
Do you think there's almost a sense of like, you know, artists are entering into a realm of almost self-censorship, that, you know, to bow to that political correctness and to please whichever gods on whichever side, the right or the left, but sometimes, as you say, increasingly on the left, to make work that speaks to a paradigm that, you know, kind of has to tick all the boxes instead of, you know, speaking truth to power, as it were?
Yes, I think there's an enormous amount of self-censorship. I know artists who have essentially said that to me themselves about their own work, and it's also it's really quite apparent. And I think that this, listen, partly in response to the threat of right-wing authoritarianism and all the bigotry that it typically travels with it, it's getting worse and worse on the left. It's getting more and more rigid on the left in response to the rigidity on the right.
In your book, you speak a lot about, you know, writing and film and books as a medium of arts. We're speaking to you from a more of a theatre perspective. And one of the aspects you mentioned is that one of the things that can't be digitized is a real life embodied object, so an actual book, an actual sculpture, an actual live performance. Do you think that there's going to be a kind of renewed energy after the lockdowns and the pandemic for an appreciation of live events? You speak a lot about musicians and them, you know, being on tour, but that touring itself can be exhausting. How do you think, you know, do you have any ideas about how that will look in the future?
Listen, I think it certainly stands to reason that if and when this horror is over, we will gratefully and eagerly return to all the live in-person event experiences that we used to enjoy, and those will include live performance like theater. I think the real question is, first of all, how many theatrical institutions will be able to survive between now and then? And will the economy be such that we can rebuild, you know, sort of the small theaters in a sustainable way, assuming that's necessary? And second, I mean, as you said, I wrote the book before the pandemic. The model was already broken before the pandemic. It's true that because of the nature of the kinds of things I was writing about, I didn't focus on live performing arts as much. But things were not going well there either. And again, at least in the United States, there's been this steady decline in the financial viability of, you know, orchestras and theater companies and ballet troupes and so forth. Yes, I think those things will come back in the short term. The question is, how do we construct more viable economic models for them than we had before the pandemic in the long term?
I mean, one almost requires a complete shift in the exact economic model behind theatre, ballet, dance, you know, live performances, because people often say, if you took the current business model for live performance to any business actuary, they would just look at it and say, this is just not a viable business. Because in some ways, the cost of putting on a live performance is never just going to be funded by selling tickets, you know, and to put bums on seats. And at the moment, obviously, we don't have bums on seats. But, you know, long term, what do you think those viable, are there any viable economic options that could make live performance sustainable in the future?
I was really hoping you didn't ask me that question.
Sorry.
It's really hard. I mean, there's this thing that you may know about called, it's called Baumol's cost disease. It's a kind of technical economic, and I don't have training in economics, but basically what it says is that as economies automate and become more efficient, industries that can't do that become relatively more and more expensive. So if you can't reduce your labor force, if you can't make things more efficient, and actually Baumol and Bone, these two American economists, this was like 30, 40 years ago, their example was the string quartet. They said, you know, the string quartet took 4 people to play 200 years ago, and it takes 4 people to play now. It's not like a factory that's become more efficient. So this is also why higher education costs gallop ahead of inflation, why medical costs, like an operation, a surgeon can only perform so many operations, get more and more expensive. And it's not clear that there's an answer to Baumol's cost disease. I think the only answer, I don't even know if this is a good answer, but this is how I end the book. I say, look, we need to do all of these things, but what we really need to do is rebuild an economy for the middle class. And we need to do that not just so that artists can be middle class again, so, you know, full-time working middle-tier artists who were able to be middle class 20, 30 years ago, but also so that there's an audience base that has enough disposable income to pay for things. I mean, one of the reasons that ticket sales are not viable as a sole means of support for performing arts organizations is because there just aren't that many people in society who can pay those kinds of prices. But I think that's partly because, maybe largely because, the middle class is being hollowed out. And we don't have these, you know, the sort of kind of local bourgeoisie that used to be the theater-going audience in second and third-tier cities in the United States. I mean, they've been decimated, and all the money is going to a few rich people. A rich person is only going to buy 1 theater ticket. They're going to buy the same number of theater tickets as a middle-class person. They may decide out of the goodness of their hearts to give $1 million to their theater company, but first of all, they probably won't because they're all Philistines now and they don't care about culture. But second of all, we don't want to rely on that anyway.
I mean, you mentioned class, and I think in South Africa we have a specific kind of class and race paradigm. I just want to read another quote from the book that says, "Being an artist has always been hard, but there is hard and hard. How hard matters. How hard affects how much you get to do your art as opposed to grinding at your day job, and therefore how good you become, as well as how much you are able to make. How hard affects who gets to do it in the first place. The less you can earn from your art, the more you must rely on other sources of support, like mommy and daddy. The less money there is in the arts overall, the more they become a rich kid's game, and wealth correlates with race and gender. If you care about diversity, you need to care about economics. The idea that people will do it anyway, that if you're a real artist, you'll make art no matter what, can be the product only of naivety or ignorance or privilege. And I think, you know, it speaks to the kind of privilege of both audience, people who make art, and people who consume art. And you were talking now about the audiences, but what do you think it says about those that can almost afford to be artists?
Listen, absolutely. I mean, to me, this is why, you know, as a leftist, I think we need to think about economics and to think about economics and race at the same time. We cannot separate these things. If you care about diversity, equity, access, and inclusion, you have to think about the money piece. I couldn't get numbers on this, but persistently, the people I talked to told me anecdotally that in their art, in their industry, it's becoming even more of a rich kid's game than it always was, because art is a tough business. It always is skewed towards affluent family backgrounds, but getting worse and worse, more and more. Yeah, and therefore, I mean, we, you know, for example, and again, I don't know if this is happening in South Africa, but there's a big push now, and this I think is good. There's a big push now, say, in the publishing industry, to make it less white. It's very white in the United States, and to try to get more people of color. Well, how do you do? I mean, it's a fairly futile endeavor if entry-level salaries in the publishing industry remain as low as they are. If you're paying somebody $30,000 a year and they have to live in New York, how are you going to get people of color? How are you going to get anybody from a poor background? So, yeah.
Do you think a lot of your other work has dealt with kind of the economics of academia? Do you think there's a role to be played by institutions that train artists, whether that be in performing arts, music, or creative writing? Do they have any kind of responsibility in creating this economic model that is, as you said from the beginning, entirely broken?
Right. So there are a couple of things. Many artists in the United States pass through, I would say, venture to say, most of them pass through at least a first degree. Many of them get master's degrees as well. These programs have been growing for years now. So first of all, I think maybe there are too many. I mean, typically students graduate with a lot of debt, and I think the universities are not being responsible in terms of looking at how many graduates the market can absorb. I mean, obviously, you know, universities treat these programs as cash cows, and they don't want to hear that, but I think they need to. Second of all, university employment, at least in the United States, has been a huge means of support for artists, for certain kinds of artists, creative writers, theater professionals, classical musicians for a long time. The problem being that, as in higher education in general, there's been a movement in recent decades from full-time employment to adjunct one class at a time employment, which pays poverty wages. And universities have been doing this as a cost-cutting measure. And they've been cheating their students because you don't get the same kind of education if you have an adjunct who is teaching 5 classes and doesn't have time to really pay you attention, and also who's only there for 1 semester, so you can't develop an ongoing relationship with them. And then maybe most importantly, and I talk about this in my chapter on art schools in the book, art schools need to prepare their students to take their degrees into the market and be financially viable. And it's not an easy line to walk, because the easy thing to do, and a lot of schools in the United States have been doing it, is to just turn themselves into trade schools. So instead of teaching painting and sculpture, they're teaching, I don't know, computer graphic design, or, you know, all kinds of market-oriented. The School of Visual Arts in New York used to have 4 master's programs. Now it has 22. And most of them are sort of these market-oriented kind of here today, gone tomorrow things. That's the easy thing to do. And then the other easy thing to do is just ignore the issue of money altogether, which so many art schools and so many art professors tend to do. And the hard thing to do is to teach your students to make art, legitimately self-expressive, important, impactful art, and then teach them how to make a living doing that. Or give them the tools that will enable them to try to make a living doing that, which means to start to talk about the fact that they need to do that long before they get out of school. It's not even just a how-to, here's how to write up a resume. It starts, and I talk about this in the book, it starts with actually a very deep exploration of the reasons you want to make art in the first place, and what you want your art to do in the world, and what subworld you want your art to be part of. Like really looking at what the world looks like, the market, for-profit, non-profit, and then going from there.
And I think you speak, you know, a bit about kind of copyright and patents. And one of the tools that I think a lot of art students come out of university or college without is an understanding of who owns their work and who has the rights to it. Do you think that the kind of globalization and the eroding of intellectual property rights, do you think there's any way forward in that? And although there's been some pushback against it in the United States lately, is there anything that globally that can be done about, you know, artists reclaiming their ownership and their rightful ownership of their own work?
Right. So this is a thing, this is a legislative issue, and it has to do with copyright law. And there are efforts in the United States. I'm not going to say that there's a lot of progress, but there's more and more. But as I understand it, and I wish I had the details at my fingertips, the European Union actually passed a really important law or regulation that I think has not taken effect yet. I think it was passed last year and is supposed to go into effect next year, that tells basically what it says is that the platforms will now be held responsible for pirated content on their sites. This is a huge, huge, huge thing. Under current copyright law in the United States, there's a very, very big loophole that enables them to evade responsibility. It's called the safe harbor provision. The companies violate it routinely because it says that you have to not know that things are being pirated and you have to not make money from it. And neither of those is true, but this needs to be enforced. And I mean, that's a huge, huge piece of it. Like the amount of pirated content on YouTube. And this is generating, somebody told me that they saw a number, I haven't verified it for myself, that a third of Google's profits, a third of Google's revenue comes from pirated content. That's an enormous amount of money. So this is going to happen, country by country or jurisdiction by jurisdiction at a time. And obviously the big ones like the EU and the US will be the most important. But these would be really, really important regulatory changes that could make a big difference.
Thank you very much. I think that's my last question. I don't know if there's any questions from the audience. I can't see, but if someone can pass the mic.
Jy moet 'n vraag hê. Hi Bill, this is Higu speaking. We communicated via email. Thank you so much for doing it so early in the morning. I know you were up at what? It's 7:30 on your side now in the morning, right? 8 o'clock. Yeah. I'm handing over to Cornelia Farsons. She's one of the sponsors of this event, and she's got quite a few questions for you.
Great.
Hi. My first question, I don't know if I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to go with one question. Okay. My first question is around the idea of social media and the internet. And I know in your book you talk about how Silicon Valley has made it possible for people to upload content on the internet and for everyone to be an artist. And it's a big democracy of everybody is allowed to share, and there shouldn't be gatekeepers and curators anymore in this whole new World Wide Web that we live in. But I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on the notion of something like social media and how we as people, how we've changed because of social media, and how artists and the way that we view the world, how that has also changed. I'm not sure if you understand my question. I'm highly against social media, and I also teach a course at a university here called Introduction to the Industry, which is about the theatre industry and how students should embark on it once they've finished their studies. And all they want to do is talk about TikTok. And for them, that's the world where they make art now, and they think of this as a platform for themselves as artists. And I think as artists, we should resist actively participating in these platforms because we think of it as a democracy, but Facebook is really, that's the epitome of capitalism, and it's part of a bigger system that have negated artists to, you're worthless workers. If you can't bring in money for the system, you have no value actually. So yeah, just in general, what do you think of social media?
Well, look, I deplore the effects of social media on our brains and our societies I suspect much the same way that many people do, probably that you do. But I want to maybe offer a couple of counterintuitive responses. And I could also talk about, how our life online has sort of coarsened the art that gets made and the art that we expect to get made, because we're consuming art in a climate of instantaneity and everything has to pop the moment it hits. But I actually made an effort in this book not to make a lot of value judgments and aesthetic value judgments. I do in this one long chapter called The Fourth Paradigm. That's sort of the cultural criticism chapter, but I tried to bracket it because you know, people love the art that they love, and it may not be the art that I love. And I am 56, and I grew up with different kinds of media and with different, sort of schooled in different, in artistic traditions that no longer have much salience now, which makes me very sad, like, you know, high modernism, difficult art, challenging art. But if your students want to make art for TikTok, then first of all, there's nothing, I suspect nothing you or I are going to say to them that's going to change their minds. And second of all, like, that's where people are now. I'm not even going to say, because I'm not a hopeful person, well, there'll be great art coming out of TikTok too. I think probably there will be, but whether there is or not, I think we need to meet the audience where it actually is. We can't, you know, I mean, Brecht said, you know, socialism will require new people. I mean, but he was being ironic, because we can't demand that there be new people. We can show them the value. We can make work on platforms that are slower, you know, live performance, and continue to make the best work we can and show people the value of that by demonstrating it, by embodying it. And then also, and you may not want to hear this, and I don't want to hear this either, and I didn't want to think this before I wrote the book, but capitalism and democracy are not antithetical. In fact, they tend to go together. Now, again, I'm not a fan of capitalism. I'm certainly not a fan of capitalism as it's evolved during my adult life for the last 40 years under neoliberalism. We need desperately to bring it into check the way we did in the decades after World War II. But I worry, and I say this in the book, like, you know, one answer that people tend to give to the problem of arts funding is, you know, the government should pay for everything. And I don't know about South Africa, but in EU, the per capita arts funding is, or per GDP percentage arts funding is 63 times higher than it is in the United States. And I look at it and say, oh, I wish we had that here. And of course, I do wish we had that here. But that actually isn't the way I want art mainly to be supported. Because when art is funded by the public, or it's funded by private philanthropic foundations and institutions, someone is making those decisions. And the someones who are making those decisions are bureaucrats and time servers and the kinds of people that I detested when I was an academic. And it's being made by committees, and committees tend to be conservative with a small c, and individuals tend to reward their friends or have their own agendas. And the market, the capitalist market, when it's working properly, when there's a strong middle class, when people have money in their pockets, is a way to transmit the desires of the audience. And if art is not responding to the desires of the audience, even if the desire is for TikTok, we are not doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're not, you know, it's just, I mean, how does art survive if it parts company with the actual audience?
Maybe we need to educate our audiences better, because Tiger King is not art and Netflix is not art. I'm being facetious, of course. But
no, listen, I agree with you in principle. I do. And this has been was my position for many, many years. But educating the audience, I mean, first of all, it sounds a little patronizing, but also I think it's fairly futile. I mean, I think it can happen around the edges, and I think this is partly what's supposed to happen at university when students take classes in literature or theater or whatever, that their tastes, their desires, as Socrates says, we need to re-educate our students' desires. But he was only working with a few students at a time, and he was a very powerful guy, and then they killed him anyway. You know, it's the fact that your students themselves are saying, I want to make work for TikTok, that says to me, listen, we need to pay attention to what the new generation is telling us about how they express themselves.
I also wanted to ask about government. I think in South Africa, it's probably 1% of what they are spending in America on artists. It's basically completely non-existing. But I think we've got an interesting period ahead of us where there's really energy from artist communities standing up against government, and hopefully the energy will kind of resolve in a matter that's better for the industry. So my second question would be about celebrity versus artist. In South Africa, there's not really a distinction. So if you're successful, you're a celebrity, and if you're doing uncommercial work, you're unsuccessful and not a celebrity. Do you have the same? Is it only here that that's happening, or is it all over the world? And how can we solve that? Because it's what happens in theatre, for instance, is that you will cast according to celebrity status because you want to sell tickets, and not the right actor for the role or what.
Yes, I think this has been more and more of a problem in American theater as well, as I understand it, is exactly what you just said, that you want the celebrity to sell tickets. Listen, this is a hard problem to solve. What's happened in the arts economy in general is what they call the blockbuster effect, so that the big is getting bigger, small is getting smaller, and the middle is disappearing. And that's true not just in terms of where the money is going, but also obviously correlatively where the attention is going. We're all competing in this attention economy, and the logic of the internet is such that it drives. I mean, it's what makes the big get bigger. It's what they call network effect or power law distribution. If something is viral, it tends to become more viral. If someone is famous, they tend to become more famous. That may have been true in the television age, but it's even more true now because of this multiplier effect of the internet. What to do about it? I'm not sure that there's an easy answer. Well, and also I haven't thought about it very much, but one thing, and I'm really just kind of throwing this against the wall and seeing if it sticks, but celebrities themselves, if they're themselves serious artists, I mean, they're, serious actors who are also very famous, can be the ones to help pull up less, sort of the less famous and the art in general. So I think of like some movie stars, they tend to be female movie stars that I can think of, Kate Blanchett or Nicole Kidman, I think, and some others who are involved in theater or have started production companies that are helping produce work by people who aren't famous, maybe specifically female or artists of color. Certainly that's true of Black artists in the United States. So I guess what I'm saying is that the answer to the problem of celebrity may be the celebrities themselves, if they're inclined to and can be encouraged to use their celebrity, their fame, and their money to elevate the art in general, to elevate other people.
Hi, I'm an arts journalist. My name is Dion. I know you said I better take off my mask. I know you said that you aren't a very hopeful person, but I was wondering, because this event that we are at the moment, it's a Teksmark. It's the first time that all of us have been back to live theatre, and it's been very interesting. Yeah, so it's been very interesting to see the enthusiasm of the audience. So all the audiences are people who are art related, so this is not the general audience. But I'm wondering if, because of COVID, and not being patronizing to audiences, but perhaps there's a chance for us there, or an opportunity post-COVID, where audiences return and are excited again, by live performance, by theatre, and we'll start taking it more seriously. And perhaps there's a gap for artists there, if they can last that long, because we don't know how long this period is going to be.
You're right. And by the way, let me be clear. When I say that I'm not a hopeful person, what I mean is that I don't expect that things are going to get better. It doesn't mean that I don't think they can. I just don't. I don't rely on that psychologically. But I absolutely think you're right. I absolutely think you're right. That because of the pandemic, we talk about, I don't know if you use this term in South Africa, we talk about it, all of a sudden we're talking about essential workers, and all of a sudden we realize that these people that we treat like dirt and pay nothing are really, really important to us, like the people who put the food on the supermarket shelves and so forth. So we're gonna, I mean, these gusts of feeling and consciousness, I think, tend to be transitory. And if things go back to normal, very quickly we're going to stop thinking about essential workers and stop caring about them. So now is the, and artists are part of that, right? So now is the time, I absolutely agree with you, when the audiences start to come back. And yes, people will be incredibly grateful. They will be incredibly appreciative. They've already remembered how important the arts are for them, because this is also part of what's been keeping them afloat psychologically, spiritually during the pandemic. Now is the time. A year from now is not the time. A year later is not the time. Now is the time to try to rewrite the contract between the artists and the audience and the government to say we need to put the arts on a sounder financial footing. And I think the way to do it is to mobilize allies. And again, I mean, this only just came up in the last question, but you know, big famous celebrity artists can really be important, I think, in helping move that political needle and that attitudinal needle.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks very much. If there are no more questions from the floor, I don't think there are. I mean, I'd like to just add that I think that theatre makers, directors, artists, musicians, writers are essential workers of the most essential type. And I think it wasn't for them, very few of us would have even survived the lockdown and the period that we've been through. I'd like to thank you for the book and for putting words out. And although you didn't anticipate the pandemic, I do think that it captures the kind of reality and the economic realities facing artists at the moment. I also think that artists are capable of imagining, and if anybody's going to survive the pandemic and the lockdown, it's people who can imagine, and those are artists. So while the title of the book may be The Death of the Artist, I don't think any art is not dying anytime soon. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us. And hopefully next time you can be here in person.
Okay, I hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. Dis dit. Die boek is beskikbaar op Audible of Kindle. Julle kan maar net daar gaan kyk. It's a really interesting read. I'm still busy with it. Môre 10:00. Great. Dankie.